Welcome back to A Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes and I'm joined by Laura Bradburn. We're covering the Celtic versus Hamilton Accies game. It's at home. We're a goal up. Laura, first half thoughts?
It's absolutely amazing what can happen when you look as if you're interested in playing a game of football. It was... I have to say, not just from a Celtic point of view, but from a Hamilton point of view, it was very back and forth. They look as if they've come to play a game, and I think perhaps we're buoyed a little bit by our recent performances that they might be able to come and get something from us. But what that's allowed us to do is exploit the spaces and getting around the back a couple of times. Obviously, the goal came from a kind of shot from outside the box that didn't require too much getting in behind. But in general, it was just a very enjoyable game of football to watch, I thought.
We'll start off with the goal then. I mean, Lee Griffiths' seventh goal of the season. He's up there, he's partnering Eddie, which I think all Celtic fans are always crying out for, the two up top, particularly at home. We're thinking back to the opening day of the season when it looked as though Edouard would be in amongst the goals. It hasn't really worked out this season. But, I mean, Lee Griffiths, he had a few chances. I mean, the finish was superb, but he did have a few chances in the first half. Do you fancy him to get back on the score sheet in the second half?
I would say so. The only thing that's going to stop us scoring any more goals, I think, is something that I mentioned a few weeks ago in the pod, was we are having a lot of joy through the middle and getting a lot of space. I think our diamond is sort of, I think they're really playing with two wing backs and three midfielders, so we're getting a lot of extra space with that extra body in the midfield. The only way I can see us not scoring is if we continue to use the wide areas as much as we are, because again, we're swinging balls in when we don't really have a recognised header of the ball unless it's at a set piece where you get somebody like a Shane Duffy or an Iyer coming up to actually be on the end of a cross. I think if we keep swinging balls in for Griffiths and Edouard, you'll not get much joy out of that.
I'm going to run through the team, Laura. Bain hasn't had a great deal to do.
No.
I mean, we'd be sitting here saying Barca still hasn't made a save. Bain hasn't had a great deal to do. But I'll tell you what, I was a wee bit concerned about, it was a ball into the box that you'd expect the defence to deal with. Was it Moyo? It was the miss. You looked at the positional play, Beaton and Duffy. It was a reminder 10 minutes before half time that we can really be quite weak at the back. There was another one. It was a searching ball by Hamilton that was mistimed by Taylor. These are the things that I think, going by that statistic that you were talking about at the start of the game, 33 different lineups in 36 games, something along those lines. That's what's going to happen. There's a breakdown in communication. You would expect your left back to be in a certain position. He's not there. So that's the one thing that does concern me, and it's been a concern all season, where we've kind of controlled the game. We've not really been under any pressure, but sometimes it's just a simple cross or a simple ball over the top and we're struggling.
Well, I did actually, that crossed my mind when I think Griffith scored in 11 minutes, but at 10 minutes I did think to myself, this is reminding me a bit of the Rangers game. What I don't want us to do is dominate, because we were on top for the majority of the first 20 minutes. What I don't want us to do is dominate and not capitalise on it, because we all know what happens with Celtic when we don't capitalise on our periods of dominance. You end up in a situation where, especially when you've got a Hamilton team who seem quite happy to play on the counter-attack and could be quite dangerous from it, you're in a situation where if you don't take every chance that's coming for you, you could end up on your backside and they're up the other end of the park scoring a goal.
Now, I'm looking at the full-backs. I think Iyer has impressed at right back. He loves bombing down the right, which is a traditional Celtic throwback to the overlapping full-backs, which is great. How do you think Taylor's played?
I thought he started the game well. He was definitely offering as much down the left as Iyer was in the early stages. I think the joy that Iyer was getting maybe meant that we were focusing our play down the right-hand side a little bit more, so he didn't have as much to do later in the game. But it's certainly not, I've seen Taylor be a bit of a weak link in the past. I wouldn't say this was one of them. I think he's put in as good a performance as I've seen for a while.
I've been hearing that there are other bids coming in for Celtic players, which concerns me quite a bit. One of them is for Ryan Christie, sitting on the bench. The other is for Chris Iyer. There is no way we can afford in this transfer window to lose someone like Chris Iyer, is there?
No, because I think we're in a situation where, as we were saying about Frimpong before the match started, it looks as though even if he's been 6 or 7 weeks with the transfer sort of going on in the background, we certainly weren't expecting maybe to lose him in January, and it certainly doesn't look like we've got a replacement lined up. And what Iyer gives you is, I'm now certain that he could be a more than competent right back, and he's got the flexibility between him and Elhamed to cover the centre half positions as well. If you were then to close the Ben Davies deal from Preston, you've got another guy who can do the exact same thing on the left hand side. He's a centre back and a left back, so you would actually end up in a slightly stronger position than you maybe thought you would. And I would certainly hope that if we can hold on to Iyer at least until the end of the season, that kind of allays any fears we might have about losing Frimpong.
How do you think we've managed without him? I mean, I would suggest that Iyer has been even more offensive without Frimpong being in there. It seems as though he's got a wee bit more freedom, doesn't it, to get right down the right-hand side?
Yeah, unfortunately it looks as if he's taken a couple of crossing tips off Frimpong at various points, but hopefully he'll sort that out. But I think he's been an absolute revelation in that position. I don't particularly remember him striding forward like that at any point as a centre-back, so the suggestion to me is that he is very much sort of disciplined depending on his tactical positioning, and I think that's definitely something to applaud him for. But when he gets the freedom to go forward, he's definitely, willing and able to do it.
I don't think anyone was making any complaints when my camera dropped out there, Laura, but hopefully we're back.
It's usually me.
Gremlins in the system. I'm looking also at the midfield area. I love the look of Turnbull. I know that you got a bit of stick earlier in the season when you were looking at the impact that Turnbull had made. He loves that wee dink over the top. He done it again in the first half. He's always looking to create. His distribution is absolutely superb. Are we looking at the future here for Celtic? Sorrow, Turnbull, with the old head now of Callum McGregor?
I hope so. I think Turnbull certainly, and Sorrow, if we can hold on to one or both of them for a prolonged period of time, have as much potential as you would want to see in players of their age. They've got creativity. They offer something different that we've not had for a long time. When was the last time you could say we'd had a true sort of number 10 like David Turnbull? I couldn't tell you the last player we had that was like that. Somebody that, if you've got a finisher of the calibre of Griffiths or Edouard, if you've got somebody behind them like Turnbull that can split the defence, that's somebody who's invaluable in that case. I wouldn't care even if he wasn't a particularly prominent or proficient goal scorer. As long as he was there creating the chances for people and chipping in with the odd goal, I would be more than happy.
During the season, Laura, have spoken about El Yunusi in the same breath as Ncham and Rogic, because he frustrates the life out of me with his inconsistency, and because of that I would never have the three of them in the same side. I know that Rogic's on the bench. How do you think El Yunusi's performed first half?
Well, when we came on at the start, it's amazing what you can do when you want to play a game of football. That is basically him, and Edouard is who I was referring to. They're two players that you can tell within 5 minutes of the game starting whether they're up for it that day or whether they're not, and what you're going to get out of them. Tonight, he seems to be enjoying his football. I saw him smile a couple of times when he tried certain things, which I couldn't tell you the last time I saw him do that. It just looked like he was up for giving things a go and trying to, maybe not entertain, but certainly, make chances for the rest of the team and for himself, and that's all you're looking for out of a player like him.
Absolutely. I mean, we didn't focus too much on the bench, but we're at half time, so let's have a look at the bench. Obviously, we've got the number one, Barkas, as the number two, a couple of strikers. Yeti, he came into the side, he looked like an excellent signing. Initially, we were just looking forward to him getting fit, but Griffiths has came in, he scored goals, and Yeti obviously can't displace him. Klimala again, why can't Celtic produce a player of his age from our own academy? I don't know. But then I also asked the question of Yeti and Barkas, £10 million worth of talent coming in this season, and they're on the bench, which is part of the issue that we've had this season. The recruitment hasn't been as successful as we would have liked. Meanwhile, we've also got an AC Milan player sitting on that bench as well, alongside the youth of Welsh, Ralston and Johnson, and of course Christie and Rogic. Do you think we'll be looking across along the bench, Neil Lennon, to see if any of those players will make an introduction to this side?
Well, if his track record's anything to go by, Turnbull will come out and be one of the most effective players in the second half, and that will cause Neil Lennon to think I'm going to take him off, which is what I expect to happen. Christie and Rogic are always good options to have on the bench for creativity. You know, if we were, struggling to get that second goal, that's an option you can bring on. That's the only changes at the moment I would be looking to make, because I think right now, it's that old adage of if it's not broke, don't fix it. I would like to see Yeti given a chance if we can wrap up the game early in the second half, because I think he's maybe being written off a little bit too early in some quarters. I would like to see him given another bite at the cherry, just to see if he can get a bit more into the team and not be sort of written off as this waste of money that a lot of people seem to think he is at the moment.
They're the two players, aren't they, that we've been talking quite a lot about. And, there is a feeling that given time, both of them may come through this and may turn out to be decent enough signings for Celtic. At this moment in time, we're looking at a huge investment of 10 million sitting on the bench. And I think that's where the comparisons were that I was making, Laura, in relation to the aftermath of a season like the John Barnes / Kenny Dalglish season, where we're paying off management teams, we're bringing in new management teams, there's expensive signings who aren't going to play a part. Back then it was Berkovic and Raphael Scheidt. This time round, it could well be Barkas and Yeti. But I agree with you. I think at least one of them has to be persevered with. And I'm hoping it is Yeti. I mean, when you're looking at some of the skills and some of the talents he was bringing to the table, the unfortunate thing for me was that we played him more often than not as a lone striker. We're now in a situation, and hopefully we can extend the lead. When we're playing at home, we've got two up top. I would like to see Edouard finishing the game, to be honest with you. Give Griffiths a rest, bring on Yeti, let's see what he can do as part of two up top.
Yeah, and I think what people have sort of quickly forgotten, because as Celtic fans have short memories, I think what people have kind of forgotten a little bit in all the drama that's gone on recently is when Yeti came in at first, he was scoring goals. People were excited. He looked like this kind of, typical striker who was going to bang in goals as long as they were put on a plate for him, and sometimes that's all you need. He can't have lost that. He might have lost a little bit of confidence. He might have lost a little bit of instruction of what he's to do, but he wouldn't have lost that ability to find the net. And so if we're playing well and we're flying, I would get him on, get him hopefully a chance to get a goal and get his confidence back up.
Absolutely, I totally agree with that. Now, I'm going to have a quick look at some of the messages coming through, because there are some concerns from, for example, Paul Campbell, who reckons he's seen this movie before. That was the only real concern, wasn't it? That, and the fact that I still don't think that we have that option out wide when we're at that, the centre of the field where it's all packed. I mean, there was a great example of that where, two or three of us ended up with a shot and it eventually went wide. We're just looking for the outball sometimes, left and right, and we don't have that. And I don't really see, other than Johnson, who we would bring in to change that really in the second half. One positive I would also say is kicking off in the second half, it's scoreless at Easter Road. So we've actually clawed back 2 points as it stands. And hopefully we can talk about that at the end of the game as well. Laura, do you reckon that even with a good performance in the second half, it will still be doom and gloom around about Celtic Park?
No, if things stay the way they are, the 10's back on. Let's go for it. I mean, honestly, at this point, I just want us to get back into a way that we enjoy watching the games. We are focusing more on the football, regardless of what's happening elsewhere, and hopefully, a new manager is announced or coming in soon, and we can look towards the future. But right now, all I want is for us to be enjoying the matches that we're watching.
Well, this season of all seasons, we expected to be talking about football and a momentous historical season. We have spent a lot of time talking about matters off the field, Laura, but let's go back to the field because we have kicked off for the second half and we will be back at full time for the full analysis and reaction of the game. Thanks everyone for getting involved on Twitter, Facebook and YouTube, and thank you to Laura Bradburn for joining me on a